And we're back. College football tradition here on YouTube and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We are going to be talking about the Sun Belt Football Conference today. It's the Sun Belt Preview Show. Last year, this conference produced the 12 seed in the college football playoff. That was James Madison, who finished 12 and 1, a deserving spot in the college football playoff, led by Alonzo Barnett III, the quarterback who was just electric all year. He heads off to UCF. And obviously, Coach Chesney heads off to UCLA, but still, JMU, one of, if not the favorite to repeat as Sun Belt champs. They've just been awesome since jumping up to the FBS level. Joined alongside Jacob Vanderford and Lucas Miller. We're going to open up with the AP poll, though, because the AP poll dropped today, the preseason AP poll. So I'll pull that up for you, for those of you who are watching for those of you who are seeing this on screen. Ohio State opens up at number 1. They received over 40 of the first place votes. This is the first time since 2015 that an SEC team did not receive a first place vote in the preseason AP poll. 2015, Ohio State swept all of them as the reigning national champs that year. They pop up at number 1 this time around. Oregon at number 2, they received a decent amount of first place votes. Georgia was number 3, no first place votes for the Bulldogs. Notre Dame received some. Texas did. Indiana, I believe Miami did. So a couple teams all in there. Top 7, not too much of a gripe with it. I think that this is a fair top 7. Going down the list, like a lot of SEC teams jumbled in there from that 8 to 13 range. A lot of teams that we saw in the playoff last year. LSU, that we see with a new cast of characters. 2 teams tied at number 14 with BYU and USC. And then Missouri rounds it out at number 25, a spot that I feel like they just perennially hold kind of until the college football playoff rankings come out. I feel like Missouri's just always in that 24-25 range. Guys, what's your initial reaction as we enter this Sun Belt talk, but mostly the AP poll?
I feel like the top 10 makes a lot of sense. I mean, Indiana, I think that's one of those schools that you look at this list and you're like, why are they number 6? They were just champions, like they just won it all. But they lose a lot of the production from last year. A lot of their players are drafted, a lot of turnover with that team. You're getting a new quarterback in Josh Hoover, who played at TCU. I feel like he had some good games. The tough thing about Josh Hoover is he had a lot of turnovers. You think about his interceptions, just turn the ball over a ton, and that I don't know how that's going to work in that Indiana offense. Within an offense that is really just trying to, pass the ball around, run the ball, play consistently. So we'll see what Indiana can do. I'm also really surprised at like Iowa at 22. I'm not really sure what that offense can do. The offense is always I feel like just a poor point for them. The defense is always standouts. But at Iowa, you got quarterbacks Hank Brown, and you've got Jeremy Heklinski, I believe. Heklinski is a transfer from Wake Forest. You've also got Hank Brown, a former Auburn quarterback, didn't play a ton. So I'm just not really high on Iowa, and I feel like they should have been outside of the top 25. That's just me. And then Lucas, I'm looking at Penn State too at 18. That's a school for me that I feel like just had a downward slide towards the end of the year. Just like a disappointing season overall. But again, you bring in Matt Campbell, you bring in Rocco Becht, a lot of great players from Iowa State. I just feel like in a new environment, in a new conference, that's a team that has a lot to prove, just as Matt Campbell is transferring into that new conference, as Rocco Becht's transferring into that new conference. So it's just a lot of new players there. I'm liking SMU at 19. You got Kevin Jennings coming back. I like BYU. You're returning, like we've talked about recently, LJ Martin coming back and Bear Bachmeier. So there's just a few teams on here that I think I really like, and then also I'm surprised by in this top 25.
Yeah, I think that the top 5 looks pretty solid. I mean, Ohio State being 1 and Oregon being 2 is really huge for the Big Ten. I forget how many years it's been, but I don't believe that the Big Ten has had 1 and 2 in quite a long time. Um,
If ever, I don't think. I don't know if
yeah,
they've ever had
I don't remember. I think it was like I feel like I read something that was like 60 years or something like that earlier
it.
today,
Oh,
but I
wow.
could be wrong. Um, yeah, I think just based off of the top 5, it's like those are clear cut the top 5 teams. I don't think that there's any arguing with that. Indiana being at 6, I honestly kind of like, just because you don't really know what they're going to look like after they've lost Fernando Mendoza and they've lost so many players that were just such key contributors to that national championship team. So it feels like being outside the top 5 is good because there's always room for growth for them. Um, and then Texas A&M, I was going to kind of hit on them a little bit. I like them being up in the top 10. I think that they're a team that could really compete in the SEC, with Marcel Reed still being there, and they bring back a couple other key pieces on offense. Um, I mean, I'll talk about Penn State a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So here's kind of my initial take on that is I'm very happy with them being at least outside of the top 15 because I think that there's so many times, especially like in the past couple years with Franklin being there, that they get ranked super high and the hype gets to them really quickly. So like I'm really interested to see what Matt Campbell can do early on. So I think like 18 is just a really good spot for Penn State. At least when I saw it today, I was like, okay, that's perfect. Because there's so much adjusting that needs to happen for that school, like in the first couple weeks. And there's not like a whole lot of room to do it because they play Wisconsin so early on. So that'll be really interesting to see for them. I mean, I think that I'm hoping Rocco Beck does pretty well. I hope that a lot of the Iowa State guys on offense can mesh well. I think Washington's also actually at a really good spot if they're going to be ranked at 17. This early on, because they actually have a pretty decent schedule. They don't go on the road until they play USC, which is their fifth game. So there's definitely a lot of room for them to move up in the AP poll throughout the season. With all those SEC teams being in front of them, I think if some of them kind of stumble a little bit, a couple of them play each other, Washington definitely has a lot of room to work with there. They don't play, if I'm not wrong, they don't play Michigan. So Michigan and Washington both at 16 and 17. I think that's a really good spot, at least for the Big Ten in general.
Yeah, and one thing I noted too about this is that like there's a decent amount of Big 12 representation, maybe a little bit more than people thought that there would be. I'm not surprised to see Utah in there. I think that they're a staple of the AP top 25, especially in the preseason at this point. Texas Tech is about where I thought that they would be, BYU as well. But Houston sneaking in there, I'm happy to see because on the outside of the AP poll, the teams that were receiving a lot of votes, you had Clemson at number 26, you had Florida, and then you had the highest group of 6 team. It was Boise State, who was right behind there at number 28, technically. A couple other schools. You had Arizona, then TCU, then Navy. So you had a couple other options there from the ACC, and then also some other Big 12 teams, or maybe even a group of 6 team. The group of 6 votes were spread all around. Western Michigan got a vote, Tulane, Liberty, Memphis, James Madison, New Mexico, UNLV. Like all of these teams got a vote. So I mean, everybody was kind of split on who should be that team that falls in there, and I totally understand that. Overall, I don't have that much gripe with it. It's always a preseason topic where, it's always a summertime topic where people are like, oh, we should get away with preseason polls. And I'm like, if the AP gets away with them, then someone else is just going to put them out because I see preseason polls all summer for 2 months. It's not a big deal. Just don't get married to the rankings, is what I would say, because I wouldn't be shocked if Texas A&M or Ole Miss or LSU finish the season unranked. I think one of those three will finish the season unranked in every poll. I don't know who it's going to be, but that's just my prediction. That I think that there's so much carnage in this SEC, and I don't know which one's going to work out. I don't know if I trust Texas A&M just yet. They had a really easy SEC schedule by SEC standards last year, so they were the beneficiaries of that. They obviously took advantage of it. LSU, we don't know what they're going to be yet. Like, I'm not sure if they could go from 7 wins, or whatever it was last year, to being number 11 in the country, and that would be a playoff team, it looks like. So I'm just not sure right now. I think that overall, pretty happy with the rankings. I think Penn State's ranking is very interesting because it feels more of predictive rather than they're the 18th best team in the country. I think it's more of people saw their schedule and said, this is the easiest Big Ten schedule. They're probably going to win 9 games. I think it'd be a big disappointment if they win less than 9 games. So I think that they were looking at the schedule and they were like, oh, well, a 9-3 or 10-2 Penn State is definitely a top 20 team. And I agree, regardless. So I think overall, looking at this, no big major gripes, I would say.
Yeah, and I think looking at the top 15, It makes a lot of sense to me. Like there's no really big surprises here. A lot of these schools have been in the top 15 over the past several years. We've seen a lot of these schools come up in the playoff over the past several years. So, I mean, these are just kind of your mainstay schools. But then when I look at past the 15th ranking, like some of these schools are really intriguing to me. Like Washington at 17. This is a team that you think about Damon Williams, that whole controversy this past offseason. He's coming back. I don't know how that relationship is with Jed Fish as he's calling the plays and all this kind of stuff. Like, what does that look like? What does that offense look like? And losing Denzel Boston, their leading receiver last year, you lose Jonah Coleman as well, leading running back. So that team is going to be really interesting to see how they play in the Big Ten. But yeah, like you said, Brian, like a lot of this could be just come down to your schedule, the transfers you're bringing in, the recruiting classes that you have. And I also look at Michigan. You know, this is a team, Kyle Whittingham. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, in our Big Ten preview, but new coaching staff coming in. We'll see. What Bryce Underwood can do at quarterback as well, coming back for his second year. I think he has a chance to really take that next step and make a big leap this year at quarterback. Then the other team that's really intriguing to me past the top 15 is Tennessee. I think Tennessee, for me, I feel like Brian, you and I have talked about this too. Tennessee and Missouri are two teams in the SEC that I feel like just honestly don't deserve like the top 25 recognition
No.
sometimes. Like the teams that they play and the way that they play them, they're just not as competitive as I think they should be. And like Tennessee specifically, they're not really returning a lot of great quarterback depth. It's just a lot of unknown and a lot of unproven within that offense, and especially with Josh Heupel, like you got to have some known commodities. I feel like to throw the ball around, to throw the ball to run the ball with. I feel like the defense is always pretty decent for that team, but Tennessee for me is just I have no idea what that team's going to look like. Same with Missouri. I mean, Austin Simmons is coming in from Ole Miss. And obviously Trinidad took over at Ole Miss, but that's another team that's really intriguing. So a couple Big Ten teams, a couple SEC teams there past the top 15. I don't know if we're going to see stay in the top 25 moving forward.
Yeah. hmm I think so too. I think it'll be interesting to watch, as it always is. The AP poll come out week to week, kind of fills our cup a little bit. So it gives us a talking point before we get to those all important college football playoff rankings. But as we move on, we're here to talk about the Sun Belt, man. We're here to talk about James Madison, the reigning Sun Belt champs. We're here to talk about Troy, the reigning Sun Belt West Division champs. We're here to talk about Texas State out, Louisiana Tech in. This is a great regional conference. I think that it's one of the best group of six conferences, has a very good chance, again, of producing a college football playoff team as long as they play their cards right. So really, we're just going to jump right into it, and that's starting with App State. This is a team that only won two conference games a year ago, 5-8 overall. So they did squeeze into a bowl game late, but I think that this is still kind of like a rebuilding situation over there. So really, kind of want to hear Lucas. What are your thoughts on the Mountaineers heading into a year like this?
Yeah, I think anytime you're coming off a season where you only win two conference games, you definitely are looking to improve from that because that's a team that usually we have seen them play pretty substantially good football in this conference the past couple of years, dating back to always them and Coastal Carolina were always a really big matchup, but 4 or 5 years ago. So I would hope that they can at least make a pretty good jump from the 2 win mark. 5-8, is that accurate? They went 5-8 last year.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Um, I would hope for not hope, but my prediction for them is that they end up going bowling. I don't know if that looks like 6 wins or 7 wins, but I think that they'll at least make a bowl game. So looking at their schedule, they've got a couple games at the beginning that I think are ones that could kind of play out in their favor. The East Carolina one is sort of a toss-up, but I think that they usually play um, teams in the American pretty hard. So I think that they could win that one. I mean, they could be 3-0 going into NC State. And then coming off of that NC State game, they get Old Dominion at home. So there's definitely a couple areas where they can pick up pretty solid wins. Um, within the first half of their schedule. They have a couple guys that they have on the offensive side of the ball that I think will kind of be like the engine to that offense throughout the season, which is their quarterback Malachi Singleton and then Jakari Lewis at running back. It's usually a team that kind of relies more on the run game, so I'd say a little bit more of that this season. But yeah, I'm not super high on App State per se, but I at least think that we'll see them playing in a bowl game in December.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Lewis too. He was a 600-yard guy last year. I think, most proven guy in the backfield. But like you said, I think that they're going to rely on running the ball as much as they can. That's how I kind of remember App State to be known for. We'll see what the defense looks like. This is a team that gave up a lot of points last year. Like honestly, like they gave up 40 plus points multiple times. They had a 4-game skid right in the middle of the season in which their offense didn't help them out too much. And then they closed the year with a tough loss to Arkansas State by 1 point, snuck into the Birmingham Bowl, but lost to Georgia Southern in that one. So just kind of an odd season for App State last year, and we'll see if they can bounce back heading into 2026. Coastal Carolina. Jacob, what do we got on Coastal going into this year?
Yes, sir. The Chanticleer is coming from Conway, South Carolina. I used to love this team when Grayson McCall was quarterback. Jamie Chadwell calling the plays. They're running a triple option offense. I love that team. And I don't know if this team is going to be able to replicate that this year. I think they're going to be able to pass the ball a little bit more. You got Ryan Beard, first year head coach. He's coming from Missouri State. That Missouri State team won their first FBS bowl game. And so it's a good hire for Coastal Carolina. Definitely imported a lot of transfers from the Bears in Springfield, Missouri. But looking at Deuce Bailey at quarterback, should be able to throw the ball around a little bit. You've got receiver Tristan Gardner coming in, couple defensive linemen from the Bears as well. Mitchell Toney is one of those. So I think overall this team should be fairly decent. Last year they were 6-7. So hopefully that they can improve on that. I think if they can get to another bowl game this year, I think that is an impressive season, especially with all the turnover that they're going through. But especially since they're bringing a bowl winning team, basically a large amount of those players back to Coastal Carolina. I think this could be a solid team. I'm looking at their schedule here. Starting out at West Virginia, at Morgantown might be a little tough. And then I see at Delaware, Liberty, some of those Conference USA schools. Obviously, Ryan Beard as head coach at Missouri State, played some of those teams in Conference USA last year. So he has a good idea of what their playing style is. But I think those 3 games are going to be tough for Coastal Carolina. Then looking at Arkansas State, James Madison, some of those schools. And then we're going to preview Old Dominion as well. That's going to be a tough game for him too. So might be tough to get to bowl eligibility of 6-6. But I'm looking at Deuce Bailey to have a good year for Coastal Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is another team relying on the running game for sure. Coastal lost their bowl game last year, but they did make a bowl. They lost to Louisiana Tech, who now joins the league. They don't play each other in conference play, cross-divisional play at all, but they could possibly see each other later down the line. That's Coastal. All right, Georgia Southern. You have Clay Helton, one of the more retained coaches in the Sun Belt, entering his 5th year, 27-25 overall. He has had Georgia Southern pretty solid over the past couple seasons in the Sun Belt, but this is obviously a really tough place to win. So of the 15 returning defenders who saw at least 100 snaps last year, 10 are either sophomores or juniors. So he has a lot of guys who have come back. And I think that he took in a lot of guys from Abilene Christian, it looks like. Stephen F. Austin has some roots down in that Texas FCS range. So I think that overall, like when we think of like a Clay Helton offense, we usually think of, passing the ball, a guy who's able to produce some pretty stellar quarterbacks, guys who could just rack up yards and touchdowns. So I'm curious to see what this is going to look like, especially with the passing game. But I don't have too much on Georgia Southern. They were 7-6 last year. Birmingham Bowl champions. They were the team that beat App State in that conference spot via conference bowl game. So overall, I think that this team could be pretty good. I think they could be sneaky in the Sun Belt. Looking at their schedule, they do travel to Clemson, do travel to Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State, one of the favorites in Conference USA, and then they host Houston. So that's one of the Power Four going to group of six games. So that'll be a really interesting one to watch. How they compete against Houston, really, and Clemson for that matter, is really going to tell the story of what does the Sun Belt look like compared to the top middle of the ACC and the top middle of the Big 12. Because what we saw last year was James Madison. They lost a pretty competitive game to a good Louisville team last year. I think it was 28-14. That game was pretty close for a while. And Louisville was a team that obviously beat Miami, who made the national championship. So James Madison, even though they did lose their one big time game, they kept it close. So those games matter. So with Georgia Southern going to Clemson and then hosting Houston and then going to Jacksonville State, kind of have an opportunity to see what this conference looks like at that top middle tier across the board for all those teams. Any other outlooks kind of on the Eagles? Tough team to read for sure. A lot of new pieces on offense that we'll have to look at down the line. Georgia State is our next team that we're going to look at. Last year was really, really rough. This is a team that won one game in 2025, 0-8 in conference play. I mean, they were just getting smacked around. Absolutely no semblance of a defense. They let up 70 points to Vanderbilt. They let up 41 points back-to-back to App State and Georgia Southern, 38 to South Alabama, another 40-bagger to Coastal, 38 to Memphis, 63 to Ole Miss. They just got smacked around last year, one of the worst defenses in the FBS. What do we think on that they can improve upon entering this season?
I mean, I can talk kind of hit on Georgia State a little bit. Jacob, I saw your dog was in the picture. Does she have any opinion on Georgia State?
Dude, I wish. I feel like if she could talk, she would love college football.
She seems like she would like the Mac.
Yep. Big Mac
Big
Um,
action guy.
yeah, Georgia State's kind of interesting to me from what I had read up on them. I didn't realize they actually hired Hugh Jackson, who was the former Browns coach. One of you is a Browns fan, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, Bryan.
sadly.
Sorry that I
Yeah.
just made you admit that to a
Oh
bunch of people
gosh, I
online.
was trying to hold that in.
Um, yeah, so they bring in Hugh Jackson as the quarterback's coach and I guess
Wow.
offensive coordinator now as well. So that might spark this offense a little bit because they actually only won one game last year and it wasn't even against an FBS opponent. So they have a couple of pretty strong returners. It looks like Cameron Brown is one of them. He's more of a dual threat quarterback. They also bring in another quarterback, which is Pereira, who comes from Merrimack. He threw for over 1,000 yards passing. He had 835 rushing yards from scrimmage as well. So if they have a dual threat quarterback that they already had there, and they have a guy who rushed for almost 900 yards, I think that they could probably mesh that together, maybe a dual quarterback look on the offense to get that thing going. Couple other good transfers they have coming in on the defensive side of the ball. They have an edge rusher, Xavier I believe I'm going to butcher this name, but Esquilian from Savannah State, and then they have a safety coming in from Monmouth. So a lot of transfers who are coming up from the FCS level and below. But anything's going to be an improvement over just one win last year that doesn't even come, like I said, from an FBS opponent. Um, but if Hugh Jackson can get that offense going and the defense is just at least subpar, I think they could probably get that win at the beginning of the season against North Carolina A&T. Kennesaw State, that's obviously going to be super tough. We've already talked about Kennesaw plenty enough on this podcast. Um, Maybe they can be a little bit competitive against a team like Northern Illinois in the MAC, but I doubt it. So I don't really know how much improvement you're going to see from Georgia State this year. I'm going to probably give them two wins because I would want them to at least improve from last year. But like just looking at the schedule, UCF, no. Old Dominion is going to be tough. You're going to James Madison, who's likely the favorite. Arkansas State has some pretty good potential, and it's an away game. We all know what Coastal Carolina and App State are made of. And then at the end of the year, the Georgia Southern game like could be interesting just because those are two teams that like haven't really been that great. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that there's definitely potential for this team to grow on the offensive side of the ball. They have a lot of electric playmakers and they've got some veteran experience coming in, like who coached at the NFL level. So hopefully at least an improvement from the one win.
Yeah. Phew. So for Del McGee, this is his third year. 4-20 overall. Obviously, I mean, hot seat for sure, I would say, as far as group of six goes. And the fact that Hugh Jackson is still around is
Yeah.
I
Former
I
Bengals
saw
offensive coordinator.
he was great as the Bengals offensive coordinator. And then the Browns hired him and he went 1-15. And I said, guys, wait, we might be better next year. And then we went 0-16. So I I just have a bad taste in my mouth from my
Yeah, it's
experience with Hugh
awful.
Jackson. But that was 10 years ago. So maybe they can improve upon what last year was. And I'm glad that you mentioned Cameron Brown as quarterback because I do want to talk about him. He only threw one pick last year. He had 13 passing touchdowns and he rushed for four more. So he was absolutely a bright spot for them. And this was a team that really, like, he had to be kind of creative behind that line of scrimmage. That was really tough to watch. I'm not sure how much Georgia State I'm going to get on the screen this year. Going to try to watch them early and, and hopefully, hopefully they could rack up a few wins. But I think, like you said, Kennesaw's a tough one at UCF. It could be a tough one. Northern Illinois is at home. I like that game though. I like that game for Georgia State. If they're looking for their first FBS win, I would circle that one. That's one that I would definitely have. As far as the conference slate, playing Old Dominion, then bye week, then at James Madison. Those are both the best teams in the league. Last year, both had double-digit wins. I think their final stretches is okay with Georgia Southern, Marshall, Louisiana. So we'll see what this team has. I think you need to get one. You need to get two wins before the bye, though. Whether it's Northern Illinois or maybe you snag Kennesaw, and definitely North Carolina A&T. If this team wants any hope of going bowling, got to get at least two of those. So it'll be interesting to watch them this year. But a team that we will definitely be having an eye on is James Madison, the Dukes. They came up from the FCS a few years ago and have had everybody talking. Last year, they were a really exciting team to watch. I loved watching Alonzo Barnett at quarterback. He obviously transfers to UCF, and I have opinions about how I think that might go for them down there in Orlando. But James Madison brings in Billy Napier as coach since Bob Chesney has now gone to UCLA. So Billy Napier back in the Sun Belt where he has thrived before. This is a team that when I look at the non-con schedule, Liberty, winnable. Wagner, of course, chalk up as a win at San Diego State as well. And then they got a game late at UConn, a different UConn team, pretty much the UConn Rockets, as Jacob mentioned, since they bring in all those Toledo guys over there with Jason Candle. What's our outlook on James Madison? Do we think they have a chance to repeat this upcoming year?
Could I just say something before you go ahead, Jacob?
Oh, you're good. Yeah.
The Georgia State North Carolina A&T game, I think that all three of us should make sure we sit down and watch it because it's on Friday, September 4th, and it's at 7 o'clock.
Nice.
It's at 7 o'clock
Oh,
Eastern time, so it's before the Miami and Stanford game. That's at 9 Eastern time. So we have no reason not to watch that before the Miami game.
is it
You're
televised?
so right.
It's on ESPN Plus. So
Okay.
figure out how to get
Perfect.
ESPN Plus by September 4th. We're gonna lock in.
Already got that Disney Plus bundle.
There we go.
Yeah.
No free ads on this show. They can sponsor us if they want us to
Yep.
talk about
All
that.
right, go ahead, Jacob.
You're right. We have no reason to miss
No
Georgia State
reason
early.
not to
Sorry.
watch that.
No reason. I'm looking at James Madison, and I mean, this is a team like you think about the Kurt Signetti years. Obviously, he goes to Indiana, wins national title. Then you look at Bob Chesney, a guy that comes from Holy Cross, another FCS up and coming coach. They get him from Holy Cross, and they go to the college football playoff. Like James Madison just knows how to hire head coaches. But I think this Billy Napier hire for the folks in Harrisonburg was a bit underwhelming, I think, overall. Just knowing that he did go 22 and 23 at Florida throughout his time there, and it had a lot of really disappointing years. And I think the Florida fans really wanted him gone much sooner than he was let go. But I digress. I think overall, Billy Napier was a great hire for them. We've talked about he's been great in the Sun Belt, coaching at Louisiana. He was 34 and 5 there from 2019 to 2021. Just great overall record. Won two conference titles with them as well. So he knows how to build these Sun Belt programs. He knows how to, again, just build them from the ground up. You look at James Madison, though, they had 27 James Madison players last year for the Dukes that played, took snaps. Now they only have four returners, and a lot of them are offensive linemen, defensive players. So they have a lot of restocking to do, and they did a lot of it in the transfer portal. You think about a lot of these players that they're bringing in, a lot of them are FCS, smaller school players. I'm really looking at running back Nick Herman. He had over 1,000 yards rushing at Drake this past year. I think he could have a great season for James Madison as they're rebuilding this year. I think they're going to rely heavily on running the rock. The quarterback position is the main position that I am most concerned about. You've got Arrington Maiden coming in from Memphis. Obviously, didn't play much for them. You got Davey Belfort coming in from UCF, another guy that didn't really play too much. So I'm just really curious to see what that quarterback conversation is going to look like. But yeah, I think overall they're going to have to rely on running the rock. They're going to have to rely on their big offensive linemen that they're bringing in from schools like Tennessee State, East Tennessee. A lot of these guys have starting experience, but it's going to be really interesting to see what James Madison can do. Obviously, I feel like we all are pretty high on James Madison. I think that they can make some noise this year within the Sun Belt again. But I think the main games that stand out to me that are going to be tricky for them are going to be Liberty first game. Then you got San Diego State at San Diego State. Obviously, we've talked about that team as a team that can go pretty far in that Mountain West. And then at UConn towards the end of the year, I think that's going to be tough as well, like Bryan was saying, the UConn Rockets. So those are three games that I'm looking out for that might be tough for them. Overall, I think it's going to be a rebuild, restock year. We'll see how Billy Napier can do back in the Sun Belt, but I think him being back just means good things for the Sun Belt.
Curious on your guys' opinion on things like this. He only brought in one transfer. Billy Napier only brought in one transfer to James Madison from the University of Florida. Inside interior lineman Noel Portnagen. What do you guys think about that? Like, is that a sign of potentially not great relationships with his former players? Or do you think it's maybe a sign of guys just wanting to stay in Gainesville? Or like, I guess like I would have expected guys who were maybe on the second or third string of the Florida Gators last year to maybe want to get that chance.
I think it's probably a mix of the two. Like, I think Napier found a blueprint when he was at Louisiana of recruiting some of these smaller school players, and he built a program off of that. He recruited really well as well. So he just kind of knows the territory of the Sun Belt, I think, a little bit more than he did the SEC. I think it was just too big of a jump. Obviously, he was at Alabama. He was an assistant coach there. I mean, he had some experience over time. He's part of that Nick Saban tree. But yeah, I think it was a mix of the two. Like I'm sure the Florida guys just wanted to stay in the SEC. It's a bigger conference. Why downgrade to the Sun Belt? I love the Sun Belt. But yeah, I think it's just a mix of those things. But I think it's just a better fit for him as a head coach.
I'd have to look into it more, but there's probably a significant amount of players who transferred out of Florida to like other Power Four schools if there
You're
were
right.
guys transferring out. So it could have also been a situation where um, maybe he did try and get a couple guys to go along and they already had better offers. So I don't know what it looked like as far as how many, like how big of a pool that was that he was trying to get to go along with him, like ones that maybe just didn't want to go because they have a bad relationship with them, or ones that might have just gotten a better offer that, went to another SEC school or Big Ten or whatnot. But I'm willing to bet it was more of that kind of situation where it might have been difficult for him to get those guys to go along, or maybe he just wanted to start fresh with recruiting elsewhere and bringing in transfers from from other group of six schools.
Yeah, yeah. You guys are right. You guys bring up a good point. I guess I was thinking of like Penn State and Virginia Tech and how many guys, you know, James Franklin was able to get from Penn State to go to Virginia Tech, or
And then Matt
what
Campbell bringing guys
Matt
into Penn
Camel.
State from Iowa State.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a totally different situation. You're right, and I definitely should have thought of that. So yeah, it's. I mean, he brought in some very interesting guys. He brought in guys from the FCS level who put up big numbers, and then he brought in a lot of offensive linemen who are just big guys, like guys who are over 300 pounds, guys who are over 6'5". And putting in those bodies in the Sun Belt is going to be really exciting. I mean, James Madison was already, in my opinion, a larger team than a lot of the teams that they faced last year. And I think they will be even more so. I'm not saying they'll be better, but I think that they'll be even more so this upcoming year. So, yeah, really excited to watch the Dukes going into 2026. Next up, the Marshall Thundering Herd. It's Tony Gibson entering his second year. Last year, he was 5-7. I thought that this was a pretty good season for Marshall last year. And the reason I say that is because I remember 2 years ago when Charles Huff was at Marshall before taking the job he's at Memphis now, right? Um, is he at Memphis?
Yeah, before
No,
he was
he's
at
at Southern Miss. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay, yeah. Well, when Marshall made a bowl game, what was that 2 years ago, and all those guys
yeah.
transferred out that Marshall couldn't play in their bowl game. So last year was such a rebuilding year, and they ended up with 5 wins. Like I thought that was awesome. So they definitely came out um, and overperformed, in my opinion, a lot of expectations. And they bring back Carlos Del Rio Wilson, the quarterback. He returns after throwing for over 2K yards last year. Was also really fun to watch. Running the ball as well, 700 rushing yards when you don't account for sacks. So, what's our outlook on Marshall heading into this year?
Um, Go ahead, Jacob. I thought that, Brian, I honestly thought you were about to fully take the reins on that. I was not prepared for you
Oh
to
yeah,
ask.
wait. I definitely can't. I don't know why I'm even asking you. Like I think this was one of mine. Um, they do open up at Penn State. That's a fun one for you, Lucas.
Oh,
Are you worried about that?
No, I'm gonna be at that game. I'm not worried about it at all.
Okay, okay, gotcha. They do travel to Missouri State. I like their chances against Middle Tennessee and Gardner Webb, and then you get into James Madison. So I think if you're I think you could be 3-1 heading into James Madison and be a comfortable 3-1. I'm looking at the rest of the schedule. Like you do play at Old Dominion and at James Madison, but when I look at conference schedules, when your toughest opponents are road games and you're kind of already chalking them up, not them as the team, me as an outside observer, chalking them up as maybe a loss, I like that. So South Alabama, love that you get that game at home. Love that Georgia Southern is another game that's on the schedule. Love that you get App State and Georgia State at home. Love that you close it out with ULM. Yeah, I think that this is a team that could compete for the East Division title. It will depend, of course, how that James Madison game goes. But even if they do lose that game, like there could be some carnage in this league this upcoming year. We haven't seen it in recent years, at least not in the East Division, at least not in the East Division with James Madison. But I think that we could see it this upcoming year, as a lot of teams are kind of shuffling around with new coaches and new players.
Yeah, I
Anything
mean,
else on? Yeah.
one small note I would have on them is just at least hoping that the defense can be structured and be ready for Sun Belt Conference play because they did lose a pretty good number of guys on the defensive side of the ball. I read that they had a couple of transfers coming in, at least in the secondary, but I think that they lost a pretty good amount of players within the defensive line and the linebacking core. Um, so almost actually to the point where of the 21, they only have seven coming back. So I mean, I would at least my only thing that I would worry about for Marshall would be if the defense is there once they after they play Penn State, Middle Tennessee, and Missouri State and Gardner Webb. Once they actually get into like the meat of that conference play in the Sun Belt, that they can have a good enough defense to compete with, your James Madison and Old Dominion and those kind of teams.
Hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch their toughest games be on the road. But overall, I like their conference schedule, shakes out for them. I do expect them to go bowling. I think after last year, like they definitely took a step up that I didn't think that they would take with all those new guys, but they did. They proved a lot of people wrong, and I'm excited to watch them this year. A lot of new players on the defensive side that we mentioned. Got some interesting linebackers coming back as well. So I'm really excited for this team. A lot of new faces defensively, but like you said, if they could prove that that is a spot where they've improved, like then I think that they could absolutely be competing for that East Division title. Next team we're going to take on Old Dominion. Sneaky 10-3 season last year for Old Dominion. I really loved watching this team. Did they beat South Florida in their bowl game? Was that who they beat? Closed out with South Florida, I
I
think.
think so. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but they had a really fun year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah, they
really
beat
liked
South
what.
Florida 24-10 in the Cure Bowl.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, Pure Bowl's a good one too. They open up with Norfolk State, so that's just a crosstown FBS FCS rivalry right there. Really enjoy that one on the schedule. Then they go to Virginia Tech. Old Dominion has been known to mess around with the Power Four schools in Virginia before. Uh, but I think that James Franklin, like he's coming in, and I think that he doesn't typically lose games like this. But I think that that's a great spot for Old Dominion. If you want to prove something very early, you have that opportunity. And then they go hosting East Carolina, which East Carolina is a team that we talked about in our American Conference preview show as kind of one of those dark horse teams that we all kind of really liked, especially running the ball. Then they get to host James Madison. So this is a tough start to the year after Norfolk State, Virginia Tech, East Carolina, James Madison. You'd love to grab two of those games, especially after the season you had last year. What's our opinion on ODU going into 2026?
Well, obviously they lose Colton Joseph. He ends up transferring to Wisconsin, but that was their star player last year at quarterback. He was obviously one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the entire country, and he did good enough to get himself transferred up to a Big Ten school. So when I'm looking at Old Dominion, at least to start out, I would look towards the quarterback position. They have Quinn Henicle. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, he had gotten them to a win over South Florida in that bowl game because Colton Joseph had already entered the portal, obviously, and not played in that bowl game. And then they have Jackson Potter, who is a transfer that's coming in, I believe, from Washington State. So they at least have a little bit of veteran experience there because he's a junior. Um, and then Henicle was the one that played for them in the bowl game. So I don't know what the quarterback competition is looking like at the moment between those two. But I think either way you slice it, you at least have, um, you know, at least a pretty reliable quarterback to replace Colton Joseph. Not at least not to that same, um, you know, electric and playmaking ability that he had, but at least somebody who has been around long enough to take the reins on offense. So, outside of that, um, at least on the defensive side of the ball, they have a couple linebackers that they have brought in back. They have four transfers coming in that unit as well, so it seems like they have a pretty good amount of depth at the linebacker position. But like we said, this is a team who previously, I believe they had gone like 5-7 or 4-8, and then they end up jumping to a 10-win season where they beat South Florida in a bowl game. Um, so I think that once you get 10 wins, like now what are you looking for? Can you improve upon that? Can you get to 10 wins again, 9, 10 wins, or are they going to fall flat on their face like they used to? I don't know. Um, it's at least, in my opinion, this is a team who I think can definitely compete in this conference alongside James Madison. At least going off of the momentum that they have coming in from last year. So I'm at least pretty high on Old Dominion personally.
Yeah. I think that I'm pretty high on them as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to take them over James Madison, but that is a fun little in-state rivalry that I'm really glad exists in the Sun Belt because I think that that's going to be one that we're going to be circling early on in the year. I mean, that one's really going to set the tone for this league coming
Yeah,
into conference play.
I don't think I would. I don't have them making the championship. I think they'll probably be a close third place, probably third or fourth place, but I think it's definitely a team we could watch out for.
I mean, that's kind of the bad part about being in the Sun Belt is that it is still split into divisions. Like Old
Yeah.
Dominion was they were the second best team in this league last year, and they didn't get to play for the conference title. Troy was very good too. Like they were good, especially defensively. I liked them, but I don't think that they were up to par with what Old Dominion was. So that's kind of one of the negative things about divisions that kind of exist here. One of the better things about divisions is that you don't have all these wacky tiebreakers usually because everybody's played each other. Next up, it's the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Last year, this team had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 straight games decided by 2 touchdowns or less. It was insane. They were bonkers last year. Watching this team was nuts. Like they almost beat number 14 Iowa State in the regular season, lost that game by 8, lost a lot of close games, won a lot of close games too. And they were able to scrape out an Xbox Bowl victory over Missouri State in Frisco to close out the year. Just really hilarious situations for this team. Butch Jones, he enters his sixth, seventh season. He's 26, 37 overall. He's a staple of this league as well. You see the quarterback leave with Jalen Rainier. He leaves for Iowa State. What's our outlook on this team going into this year? A lot of new faces, especially in the backfield.
Yeah, I look at Arkansas State and I still remember like Gus Malzahn was there. I remember Nebraska. I was in the marching band watching them play Arkansas State. And it was just like insane. That offense was just fun to watch. And like Nebraska shouldn't have played that game as close as they did. Like we should have beat them by more. But I just remember like being very impressed by that Arkansas State team. And it's just interesting. Like they seem to just have find these like coaches that have been around forever. Like Butch Jones. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember he was at Central Michigan, then he was at Cincinnati, then he was at Tennessee, and he's also been a part of that Nick Saban coaching tree as an offensive analyst at Alabama. So like he's just been around the block. He's a really good coach. He knows what he's doing. Like you said, Bryan, 6th year. He's 26 and 37 overall. They were 7 and 6 last year. So not too shabby. But yeah, like you said, I mean, their quarterback leaves for Iowa State. He's one of their, over 3 years had over 8,000 yards passing, 67 total touchdowns. One of the best quarterbacks in Arkansas State Red Wolves history. And then you got, backup Josh Flowers coming. He's gone, but you do bring in 4 transfers. You got Trey Owens, former Texas quarterback. You've got some Vanderbilt players coming in as well. And you've got the coordinator who's coming in is Garrett Altman, who is formerly Vanderbilt's quarterbacks coach as well, which is going to be really interesting too. After having Diego Pavia as quarterback, we'll see what they can do there in Jonesboro. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the running backs look like, the wide receivers look like. I think they've got a pretty good offensive line coming back as well. They've added a few transfers on the line, a few JUCOs. So I think overall that offense is going to look pretty solid. The defense, I think they're getting a pretty big makeover as well. A lot of transfers. Four of their safeties do return. They've got some quarterbacks returning as well. So I think overall this team could be pretty sneaky. I think that the thing that's holding them back is that Jalen Raynor transfer. I think if he was coming back, I think I would have had them higher in this conference. But I still think they make a bowl game. I don't know if they'll have those like super close games like Bryan was talking about. Hopefully they can get over the hump a little bit with that. But just looking at their schedule, they play at Memphis to start the year. They play at TCU. So those are going to be pretty tough games for them. And I think those are both going to be losses. Kennesaw State is going to be tough out of the MAC. You've got Southern Miss, and then you've got Troy as well. And so I think like those games are going to be the toughest. And I mean, maybe Coastal Carolina might be tough for them as well. But I think this is going to be a team that's going to be a 6 and 6, 7 and 5 team.
Hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. Like you said, it's going to come down to how can they replace the quarterback, what that position is going to look like for them. Are they going to lean more into the pass, like with the Texas transfer, if he ends up getting the starts? So I'm not sure if they decided on their quarterback battle just yet, but it'll be fun to watch, especially entering this season. Louisiana, next team, fifth year for Mike Desmero. 29 and 25 overall. 2024 team 2 years ago had a 10-win breakthrough, right? So that team really reflected a lot of what Billy Napier was doing when he was at Louisiana, because when Napier was at Louisiana, they were winning double-digit games a couple times, right? So because of that success in 2024, in 2025, Desmero, he decided not to bring in a lot of transfers. He only brought in 7 for last season. Didn't work out super well. They did regress, especially defensively. Well, offensively as well. Like they regressed everywhere. Walker Howard didn't work out at quarterback. So going into this year, he decided to double down. He only brought in 5 transfers, one of the smallest transfer classes in the FBS. A couple guys from the FCS ranks, especially at running back. You bring in Anthony Reagan Jr. from Howard. Do bring in Tito Checkary from East Texas A&M. He was a defensive end. So overall, brought in some quality, didn't bring in a ton of quantity. I don't know if that's going to be the right move or if this is going to play out for them. We just talked about Arkansas State, and I mentioned how their final 10 games were decided by two possessions or less. I'm looking at last year's Louisiana schedule. The last 10 games for Louisiana were also decided by two scores or less. Like they were just in a lot of close games as well. They did close it out with a loss to Delaware, Delaware's first win in the FBS Bowl season. They ended up winning the 68 for Ventures Bowl 20-13 over Louisiana. So going into this year, really curious what they're going to look like, especially at quarterback. So bring in a couple, running backs, like I said. Defense, kind of a question mark. So you still have your coordinator and Jim Salgado. And then you have a couple of defensive backs who started a couple games in 2025. So going to have to be a team that scores a little bit more points in those games that the Sun Belt is going to decide between. But the defense needs to improve as well. So offense regressed last year, defense regressed last year. Going to need to see a step up for both of those units going into 2026. Anything on Louisiana before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably talk about him a little bit. So they have a quarterback with a pretty awesome name if you have not heard of him yet. His name is Lunch Winfield, which is probably one of the best
Fun.
names I've heard going into this season.
Where's dinner at?
Um, what?
Where's dinner at? What about
Yeah,
breakfast?
exactly.
Like they gotta have some of those names on the team.
Yeah. Maybe some of his receivers could get some nicknames like breakfast
Yeah.
and dinner. I don't know. Yeah, so he seems to be a pretty dynamic quarterback. He's a dual threat player. He could have transferred out from what I read and then comes back. He ended up having 1,555 passing yards and 11 touchdowns in the 8 games that he had started. They've got a couple good targets it seems that he can throw to. One is Shelton Sampson Jr., which is one of their receivers. And then also tight end Caden Jensen, which the interesting thing about the two of them, from at least what I'm thinking for their offense, since this Lunch Winfield is a pretty good runner as well. If the defense is pretty worried about the two of them because they're both, kind of vertical threats with being a tight end and him on the outside, might open up some run lanes for him to take off and then accumulate a ton of rushing yards like he has previously. So you mentioned that they didn't really have that many transfers previously. It seems that once again, they're not really taking in a ton of transfers on the defensive side of the ball. They have a pretty good amount of guys that are just kind of returning. So I don't know if that'll be a good thing or not because Bryan, you mentioned they didn't take in a lot of transfers before, didn't really go that well. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be better. It seems that they only have like 5 incoming transfers on the defensive side of the ball. So um, I think that there's a lot of good that they have going for them on the offense. It'll be kind of the defense that I think needs to come into shape. But other than that, I'm pretty excited to actually watch them this year if I get the chance to, just because of that quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that'll be that'll be a pretty fun storyline to kind of follow this year. Definitely a team that could still take a step up. Another team that could potentially take a step up this year after an 8-win season in 2025 is Sonny Cumby's Louisiana Tech. They are in the Sun Belt this year. Coming over from Conference USA, they paid extra money to make that move, and I don't blame them. Sun Belt is definitely a better league, especially this year, and it was last year too. So Louisiana Tech, what's our outlook on this season? Last year lost their quarterback to an injury, but kind of a lot of new faces here as well as we talk about this league. Just want to mute too.
Who's got it?
I don't know how much I have on this.
I was prepping for South Alabama. My bad.
Oh no, you're good. I was doing some prep for Louisiana Tech heading into the episode. But I
Well,
mean, when you look at like this schedule overall, so Northwestern State, that should be a win. At LSU again. This is they played LSU kind of tough last year. I think that game was only 23-7. And then they go to at Baylor. So two bye games to start the year. Don't expect either of those to be wins. But maybe you could play one of them a little bit tighter and give the Sun Belt a little bit better of a rep. But then the bye week, you go and play Army after that. That's just a tough start to the year. I mean, having to play any of the service academies, I mean, you get kind of beat up through that. At least they're bye weeks early, like after that LSU and Baylor stretch. But the schedule, after the Old Dominion game, like Sunbelt wise, I don't hate it. Like you do have to go to Troy, but your easy games are at least at home. Southern Miss, Arkansas State, closing with Georgia Southern. Like this is a team that I expect to go bowling and go bowling late. So I think that they're going to be fighting until the end. Just kind of my outlook on the Bulldogs going into this year. Um,
One
Fun facts:
interesting,
my middle school football coach, may he rest in peace. He played quarterback at Louisiana Tech.
wow.
wow.
One interesting thing on them is they have their quarterback is coming back after he tore his ACL last year. So I don't know. That seems pretty crazy to come back the following season from an ACL, but um I don't know. As long as he's healthy, maybe they'll do pretty good, but I don't know as far as beyond that, like if he were to be injured again or not fully healthy, I don't know what the offense is going to look like because he has a junior quarterback who was there last season. So,
Yeah, I'm always so impressed with how fast these guys come back from ACL injuries these days. I
yeah,
mean, didn't someone come back or is projected to come back after like tearing their ACL in spring ball? Like they're still expected to come back for the start of the year. Like I read a story about that and I was like, what? Like that's
I don't know.
I don't know. It's
I mean,
nuts. Like
Mahomes is doing it right now, and I thought that was pretty insane. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
because that
Mm,
only happened in like what, January or something. It was in the playoffs that he had tore his ACL, if I'm not mistaken, and now they're already about to start the season.
that's crazy. That's just so nuts. Louisiana Tech, they also bring in Jaden Miller from Kaiser. That's a NAIA school down in one of those beach towns in Florida. But he was an 1,100-yard back at the NAIA level last year. That is such a huge jump to make. Like to go from NAIA to which I would equate it to a lot of like D2 ball, but to skip over the FCS route and to go into pretty competitive group of six, like that's going to be a pretty big jump. So I'm really excited to see him. Got some, guys they brought in from Oklahoma States, like the little roster last year. Um, it's really hard to tell on a lot of these guys coming into the Sun Belt just because a lot of them haven't gotten playing time, looking across the board. So I'm curious to see what this team will look like if they can improve on 8 wins. I like Sonny Cumby as a coach, like especially after a couple of losing seasons in a row for Louisiana Tech. To come out with 8 wins last year was just awesome, and especially to get that bowl win over Coastal Carolina in the Independence Bowl. How many bowl games last year were between teams that are in the Sun Belt this year? Jeez, oh man, like what? Crazy. Kind of moving on from that, South Alabama opening up with Southeast Louisiana on their schedule. They travel to Tulane. They also have a away game at Kentucky, and they host Ohio. South Alabama last year. They do last year
4-8.
4-8.
They're only projected 5 wins this year too, so
Dang.
not much of a
Dang.
jump.
What's the
Yeah,
outlook on the
Major
Jags?
Applewhite is still there. Come on, like he was at Houston. If you guys remember 2016, 2018, he was the offensive coordinator there the years before. He was at Texas previously. He was a quarterback at Texas, 98 to 2000. He's a pretty good offensive play caller,
Really?
but I feel like within those first 2 years, he did have the one good year after Kane Womack left to be the defensive coordinator at Alabama, where Gio Lopez was there, had a really good year. Then he left for North Carolina and didn't really do much at North Carolina. Didn't have a great year. They did have running back Fluff Bothwell as well. He was at Mississippi State. He was pretty good running back at Mississippi State. Malachi Carney, Georgia Tech, transferred to Georgia Tech. And then Ladarius Webb transferred to Wake Forest. So some pretty good players on that South Alabama team in Applewhite's first year. But then again, last year, 4-8, really disappointing season. Um, they didn't really add a ton of transfers this year. They added an offensive lineman, they added a defensive end, an outside linebacker as well. But a lot of players from FCS schools, from Louisiana Monroe. So I don't really have a great read on South Alabama this year. I think it might be another one of those 4-8 type of years for them. Um, I think if Applewhite can get the play calling going, I think if Bishop Davenport at quarterback can play well for them, I think that could be good signs. But yeah, I think overall, I don't really see South Alabama doing a lot this year. Just looking at their schedule as well, like playing teams like Louisiana Tech, like we've talked about, and Troy. Looking at that, you're going to Kentucky, you're going to Tulane, and then you play teams at Arkansas State and Marshall. Like those are all going to be tough games for them. So I think South Alabama is going to be one of those teams that might be 5-7, 4-8 at the end of the year.
We talked about like the transfer portal in this conference being kind of up and down where some teams really didn't
Yeah.
have that many guys coming in. They have 27 players that left and they only have 11 transfers coming in, with 9 of them being JUCOs. So that's
Oh
actually a
gosh.
very interesting stat for South Alabama.
Wow. I mean, I'll give them credit. Last year, like they had a lot of fight in them. Like they won three of their four wins came after mid-October. And if I'm looking at their losses, they took Troy to overtime, who won the West last year. They played Auburn tight. They only lost to Tulane by two. The defense really it, I think that they really struggled because the offense was really bad. Like I didn't trust this offense at all. So the
Uh,
defense, 9 out of 12 games, led up 30 plus points, but the offense wasn't scoring. Like, I mean, they scored in their win against Southern Miss at the in the end of the year. They put up 42, put up 38 against Morgan State and 38 against a bad Georgia State team. But against everybody else, they were scoring 20 points. Like they were good for two touchdowns and maybe a field goal or two. Like, so offensively couldn't really move the ball. So defense kind of suffered because of it. They were in a lot of these games. So I'll give them credit for having some fight last year. That's interesting, Lucas. That stat you said, like a lot of JUCO guys coming in. It's so hard to evaluate the JUCO realm because a lot of JUCO ball is better than even Division II ball at some places, some years.
mhm.
I know that I'm a big track and field guy, and sometimes I look at like the national championships for track and field and the results, and you'll have two guys, in the 100 meter or the 200 meter or the mile or something like that, and they could be making the finals on the Division I level. Like they're that insane. There's just such a big variance of JUCO, so I maybe could trust, I could definitely trust like a college coach to be able to evaluate talent better than I can, but that is certainly a lot of pieces to replace and not a lot of numbers to replace with. So curious to see what this Jags team looks like next year. Next team we'll look at Southern Miss. Southern Miss team that almost won the West last year. They did finish off their season with 4 straight losses, including a New Orleans Bowl loss to Western Kentucky. They had a stretch in the middle of the year where they pulled off 5 straight wins. Thought that this team was going to make a run at the Sun Belt title, but then they got clobbered by Texas State. Troy beat them late. That was pretty much for the West to end the year. What's our outlook on Southern Miss, the Golden Eagles, who also going to be looking a lot new this year?
Yeah, they have, let me get his name correct. Blake Anderson is who's coming in at head coach for them. So that's going to be, I believe this is his first season that he's coming in. I just can't remember if he had coached in the bowl game for them. They were in a bowl game last year, right or no?
Yeah, they lost to Western Kentucky.
Okay, I don't recall if he was with them for that or not. But either way, he's coming into his first full season. They brought in a ton of new transfers because it's kind of like an entire rebuild. It seems that most of the players were taken back when Charles Huff had left. So yeah, I don't know. This will be a very interesting team to look at just because I don't really have that great of a read on them, and I don't think I can't speak for you guys, but I doubt that you do either. I think from what I looked at on ESPN, though, they are only projected to be like in the middle of the pack, maybe like 3 or 4 wins.
Mhm.
So it's not great. Um, they have a couple of guys that are returning on defense, but for like I said, the most part, it's really a ton of different transfers that are coming in. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty much just that type of situation where like you have a coach who's new coming into a group of 6 school, and it's pretty much a complete overhaul, and you have to rebuild. And
Mhm.
that's always a daunting challenge, you know, especially in a conference like this that's so tight. You know, same way we talk about the MAC and the Conference USA. Anytime a new coach comes in there, you're kind of thrown right into the fire of like, this is how things go in this conference, and there's the top dogs and there's the middle of the pack, and where are you going to fit in?
Mhm.
I think that it's going to definitely be tough. Um, for Anderson at least in this first year. I mean, they play Auburn, UConn, Tulane, Troy. Those are all really tough games. I mean, you get Alcorn State at the beginning, that's great, but Auburn, UConn, and Tulane, that's all 3. They're no joke to play against. Troy is one of those teams that you guys are usually pretty high on within this conference. Louisiana is a team that I'm pretty high on within this conference. So they have a really tough draw within conference play. Maybe you scrape out wins against like Louisiana Monroe, maybe Louisiana Tech being the newcomer, but still they play James Madison, they play Old Dominion at the end of the year. I think it's looking like maybe 2 or 3 win season for them.
Mhm. So you're projecting kind of like a bigger drop off then.
Yeah, at least from what I'm thinking with it being a new coach and that schedule. I mean, you never know. Like a guy who's coming in as a new coach could actually really do good right away. Like we've seen it before, and I don't know what the transfer class is looking like, but schedule wise, that is a really daunting schedule. Not even just with those non-conference games. Like those are some pretty large opponents within the Sun Belt Conference that they're going up against.
Yeah, definitely one of the tougher like schedules within the league. Yeah. And I'd even say in the non-con too. Like, for sure. Next up, reigning West Division champions Troy. They were able to come out of the woodshed after losing their quarterback last year. Finished the season 8-6 overall. Lost that bowl game to Jacksonville State 17-13. That was the Salute to Veterans Bowl. So a rivalry game. It's a rivalry game. Wow, huh, interesting. But Troy ran out of magic late. So when I what I remember about Troy last year early on was when they were playing Clemson tough, and that was when Clemson was still
Yeah.
ranked in the top 10, and everybody was like really worried about Clemson at that point, and Clemson ended up pulling out the win, right? But then we saw that though that was really what Clemson looked like last year was that version that we saw against Troy. Troy ended up winning a lot of close games. They beat Buffalo close, won 2 overtime games in the Sun Belt, beat up on some Louisiana schools, beat up on Georgia State, at Southern Miss late, and they were able to get into the conference championship with that win over Southern Miss. What's our outlook on Troy heading into this year? A lot of new weapons and a new offense that we're going to be talking about.
I'm honestly pretty high on Troy. I really like Goose Crowder at quarterback. He's back. You've also got their backup, Tucker Kilcrease, coming back as well. When Goose Crowder went down with injury, Kilcrease came in, had some pretty good games, won some games. And then again, that's I honestly think that James Madison and Troy could repeat in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game again, just based on who they're returning. I think the only thing that is holding Troy back is their wide receiver core. They only return Mojo Dortch, who had some production this past season, but not an overwhelming amount. So I'm curious to see who can emerge for them and in the slot on the outside. They're really going to have to throw the ball around, and I know Goose Crowder is going to be able to find some people as well. But they are bringing in some linemen. They're returning a lot of experience, specifically all conference lineman Jordan Jones, who played at Ohio previously, and Luke Pettit at Furman as well. So I think they've got some talent up front, some strengths. I think their quarterback's coming back, going to be great for them. I think their defense is going to be pretty solid as well. They've got Donnie Smith returning, who was their best receiver this past season. He had 11 sacks. Really great at stopping the run as well. So I'm interested just to see. I think the two, I guess, weaknesses for this Troy team would be their skill receivers and then their cornerbacks and defensive secondary. Other than that, I think this team is going to be pretty solid.
I mean, I think that they'll have to stay healthy. I mean, you mentioned it. Started multiple guys at running back, started so many different receivers, so many different linemen. The fact that they were able to come out and still compete in the Sun Belt, just really credit to Gerard Parker, and the job he did there. Then offensively, he brings in Adam Austin, who coordinated FCS's Tarleton State last year. Tarleton State was a laser beam of an offense last
Yeah.
season, until they ran into Villanova in the playoffs. But they were destroying everyone. They also beat Army last year. Tarleton State did, and that was a decent Army team. So I look at this and I'm like, if you could stay even half as healthy as you did last year, I think
Yeah.
that you should be the favorite to win the West. Anything else on Troy? Nice. All right, last but certainly not least, well, maybe least, Louisiana Monroe. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, man.
Louisiana Monroe. Last season, what did they do last season?
3-9, 1-7
3-9.
conference.
3-9, 1-7 in the conference.
Dang.
The only team that was worse than them was Georgia State.
Dude,
Bryan Fitz's third
they
year.
had Ahmad Hardy there. I think he was the
Wait,
running
what?
back before he went to Missouri.
Oh, before he transferred to Missouri?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's crazy. I didn't even realize that.
yeah. You know, they were
Yeah,
good
yeah.
2 years ago. I remember they were decent. I mean, I
Nice
still
call,
think they're
Jacob.
quarterback.
Yeah,
Man, I hope any news on Ahmad Hardy? Is he going to be good to go for
I
the
hope
year?
so, man. It's that
he was
the
good.
thing that sucks is even if he plays, like, and he's not up to full potential, like he was electric last season. That's gonna be sad to see, but
Yeah,
it's just unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just absolutely sad. Yeah, but after starting 3-1 last year, ULM, not super impressive wins, but they lost 8 straight to close the year. Offense was non-existent. Just really pitiful. Their offense put up 7 points, 8 points, 14, 21, 6, 14, 14, and then an overtime loss to Louisiana, which they put up 27. But they also got blanked by Alabama 73-0 early on. That should have been a real tell of how this year was going to go. Not that they should be expected to play well against Alabama, but because just getting blanked against a lot of the good opponents that they faced. I mean, really tough. Just really tough, and that's a really tough place to win. I would say as well. I did not know they had a mod already. I'm still stuck on
Yeah,
that.
it's crazy.
Oh gosh. So what are we looking at as far as quarterback goes? Okay.
Well, they have a
Aiden
return.
Armenta.
Yeah, they
Okay.
have their returning
Ah,
starting quarterback.
Okay. 12 touchdowns, 8 picks last year. Not not terrible. Like
Don Chaney Jr. Come on now, for Miami and Louisville.
I mean, they're only projected to be what 2 to 3 win team this year.
Yeah,
So,
mhm,
which like I guess I could see, but at the same time, they're playing Southeastern Louisiana at the beginning of the year. I think, you're gonna chalk up that Mississippi State game as a loss. And then, I mean, there's not that many games. The thing is for me on this schedule where it's like you immediately chalk it up as a loss. But at the same time, they're not games where we're thinking that they can win them. Like there's
mhm.
so many teams on their schedule probably besides Troy, Mississippi State, and Louisiana, and I guess App State. Those are like those teams that all of us are like pretty high on that like you're not winning those games. But the other ones like they're so coin flips to us because they're not teams that we're high on. But at the same time, we're probably so low on Louisiana Monroe that like we don't think that they could even scrape those out, which is that's the unfortunate thing for them. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and they do return, four of their top seven linemen from last year on the offensive side of the ball. So that's always a good sign. I mean, that's a good sign on the group of six level. I don't care where you're at. But defensively, you're bringing in a lot of unknowns. I see Willie Wilson from American International on the Division III level. He had double digit sacks there. But I have not heard of American International. Like I know D3 football schools, like if from growing up in the Midwest, but I have not heard of that one. That's a
no.
new one for me. So a lot of
This is
just new guys.
this is sort of interesting on their schedule. They host Southeastern Louisiana, they host Louisiana Tech, and they host Louisiana. Like that's kind of crazy that they're hosting all those Louisiana teams.
That is crazy. Like they really don't go that far. At Mississippi State, going to there,
No.
that's not that far of a drive. UAB is not far drive. South Alabama is not a far drive. Troy,
App State might
the
be the farthest they go.
that is the farthest they go, and that's not even that far.
Marshall, I
Oh my
guess.
god. Marshall's at home. Yeah. Oh,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
jeez. I love that. I That's great for college football. Like, and you really don't across the board here. Like these teams don't travel that much. Like this is a
yeah.
really good slate that could really benefit this team long term. I love that they have an identity as a conference. And kind of closing out on ULM as we get into bigger picture talk with the Sun Belt. Who do you guys think is going to make this conference championship game? Who's hosting it? Who's winning it from the East and West?
I mean, I'm gonna say James Madison and Troy are gonna run it back. I think Troy is gonna be solid. I think they've got some good returners. James Madison is gonna be interesting to see, but like I think Billy Napier is gonna make a big jump and he's gonna do well in his first year back in the Sun Belt, and people are gonna be surprised and be like, "What happened? Why wasn't he good at Florida?" So yeah, I think those two are gonna be in the championship, and I think, man, I don't know who's gonna win it though. I mean, I guess I'll say Troy for now, but my mind will probably change.
So you're going with Troy over James Madison?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna go with a really hot take, and I'm gonna take Louisiana to spoil James Madison's attempt at going back to the college football playoff.
Ooh. Ooh.
That'll be my hot take. That'll be my one hot take that I have for this conference.
Louisiana.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I'm gonna trust in Lunch Winfield. He's gonna bring home some dinner
Lunch.
and get them to the championship game.
Yup.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna go, you know, I'm gonna say I really like Yeah, it's James Madison and Troy for me. The only downfall about James Madison is look how late that bye game is, guys.
Yeah,
Like
it's a grind.
that's that's a that's a grind. It's not tough opponents. Your toughest opponent, even if you're considering the non-con for James Madison, your toughest opponent is probably Georgia Southern, maybe Marshall. Well, Old Dominion, of course, but like it's Old
Well,
I
Dominion,
yeah,
think
and then what?
I
Like
think
what
San
else?
Diego State's going to be a tough
they
opponent.
also play at UConn.
Yeah, but I don't know. I need to see it with UConn because it's not like Toledo was a barn burner last year. Like
Yeah.
I, mm, I don't know. Like
At San Diego
that's
State's
a
going to be
grind.
tough. At San Diego State's going to be tough, I think.
They have the easiest non-con. James Madison does. It. Let me ask you this: if James Madison goes 12-0, wins the Sun Belt, but let's say you have like a one-loss team from the American, is James Madison in this playoff?
Yeah, I mean, given the teams that they play, I don't know. I don't know that their strength of schedule is that great.
It depends who that one loss American team is, though, I
Yeah.
think.
Like and who they beat. I guess who that American team beats. If they beat like a top 10
He's
team,
gonna pull it up right now.
I got it right here. These are our projections. Maybe these
who
are
does
just my
Tulane
projections.
play? See, they don't play anybody.
Tulane, Duke, Kansas State.
Memphis, like, I mean, if they beat like Boise State or something like that, then maybe. But
Yeah, I can't. When was the last? What was the lowest that a 12-0 team was ranked?
UC, no, not UCF. I don't know.
They were still like top 10 though, I want to say.
Yeah,
I
they were
want
in
to
the
say,
Peach Bowl. They beat Auburn.
yeah, I want to say they were still. Um, hmm.
I mean, last year it was Tulane and James Madison that were both in it. So according to those picks, we think that they're gonna both be in it again. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Wait, okay, so let's look at 2017 final college football playoff rankings had undefeated
12.
UCF at number 12. Okay.
That's actually crazy.
Hmm. Hmm. Something to note. They were 12-0 that year, but that includes their conference championship game. They had a game against Georgia Tech that year that got canceled because of one of the hurricanes
Oh,
that happened. So they were 12-0 conference champs, but with one less game. And I think the only game they played against a Power Four opponent was like Maryland or something.
wasn't
But
there a year that Boise State was undefeated
in
and
the
they won?
playoff era,
Maybe not. Yeah, playoff era. I don't know.
hmm, I know there was a year Western Michigan was undefeated. That was like 2015.
Yeah, Corey Davis
Let's
year.
say. Where are they at? Is it 2015? Maybe it wasn't.
2016 maybe.
PJ
Oh,
Fleck.
good call. You're so right. Yeah. Yeah, 2016. 13-0 Western Michigan was number 15.
Dang.
Wait,
Who did
scroll up on
they?
that one.
Okay, okay. So scrolling up, 9-3 Louisville up here. That was Lamar Jackson though.
Oh yeah, okay.
Um,
So that was that the wait, hang on. Trying to think. That was when
this was Deshaun Watson, Clemson winning the title.
2016 to 17. I guess that was when Colorado was like trying to help people that were Michigan fans were like trying to have Colorado's win. I think in the Pac-12 help Michigan get boosted up to the playoff, and then I think Washington might have beat them. I could be completely wrong. This is just I am looking at these teams and I might be like putting three different years together.
Well, Washington
Because that
probably did beat
was that
Colorado that
when
year.
yeah, maybe or maybe that was when I think that I don't know.
Jake
This was the
Browning.
year.
This is
Yeah,
not when Penn State and Washington played in the bowl game. This is when Washington made the playoff.
this was when Washington made the
That was Chris Peterson, I
playoff.
think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this was the JT Barrett double overtime game against Michigan for Ohio State, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, why is and this was the year Penn State won the Big Ten because they're 11-2. They won the Big
Oh
Ten
yeah,
because
because we beat Wisconsin. Yeah, I just can't remember the bowl situation.
yeah,
Oh wait.
West. Are you asking who Western Michigan played in a bowl game that year?
No, no, Penn State. I was trying to think because this is not when they lost to USC, was it? In the Rose Bowl.
I think it was the year they lost to USC.
Really, USC got into the Rose Bowl with three losses like that? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think they
okay.
did.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because it wasn't a playoff game that year. So yeah. So who did West?
So we
Okay.
started off talking about who was going to win the Sun Belt, and now you guys are reminding me about when we lost to USC in the Rose Bowl. Like, come on.
I love it. So looking at, I'm curious. I wanted to pull up 2016 Western Michigan. Out of conference, they did beat Northwestern and they clobbered Illinois, and then just ran through the MAC pretty much. Gee, destroyed everybody. Wow, was Illinois good that year? Nope, Illinois was bad. Northwestern did go bowling though. That was an impressive win. But if you're looking at James Madison's schedule, they don't have a power opponent on there. I don't know if that's because power conference teams are too afraid to schedule them or what, but Wagner's not going to do it. I don't think Liberty is that team for you this year. UConn's not in a conference that, even if UConn has 9 wins, that doesn't help you. Like, as far as like the outlook of winning a game at UConn necessarily, I don't think.
I mean, I think we're
So
probably looking more towards the American this year than these previous years of who's going to be making it into the playoff out of the group of six.
Mhm.
yeah, well, the American made it last year too.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that probably much more this year than the Sun Belt.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that there's a lot more heat in the American this year. And I think the Pac 12, if it's Boise, and just because, I mean, they also play a really impressive non conference schedule too, including Western Michigan. Yeah, a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Okay, a lot of James Madison, a lot of Troy. Lucas threw out of Louisiana in there. Uh, Anything else on Sunbelt before we wrap up? This is our last group of six pod, guys.
Dang.
We're getting closer.
Thank God. This was a struggle.
We're
Yeah.
about 2 weeks away from week 0, right? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
we are
Yes. College
so
football is
close.
back, baby. Let's go.
We are so dang close. So we got coming up for you still on college football tradition. We got the Big 12. We already did the ACC earlier in July. We got the SEC. We got the Big 10. And we will do our college football playoff prediction show where we predict the winners of every conference championship game and project what we think is going to happen in every league. And then project the final college football playoff field and how we think that that's going to go. So stay with us as we get into week 0. We are so close to the beginning of the college football season. Lucas, Jacob, anything before we wrap up? No? All right. Well, for Lucas Miller and Jacob Van Ford, I'm Bryan Partiga. This is CFBT. See you later.